Chapter 4356. It's a long story. I don't abandon your excellency. The wind instrument starfield was different that day. I thought it would be harder to see it in my life. I can't even meet you again. The young men and women looked at each other and laughed. Jian Wushuang heard a slight jaw, and nodded. We are indeed quite destined. The two were from a pair of ancestors of the Tianjian sect in this wild wasteland. Jian Wushuang met when collecting the gas of Haishui 5,000 years ago. At that time, a war broke out in the star domain where the gas of Haishui was located. Both of them it is dominated by the 5th level. Naturally, it is not safe and is being hunted down. The person who chased them was the one who occupied the heir of Haishui. Jian Wushuang slain the man and took away the heir of Haishui. It was also a misery and a blunder. Came down. Since then, the two have been grateful for Jian Wushuang and embarked on a journey. And Jian Wushuang saw that the two were innocent and inexhaustible. After several exchanges, the three were familiar. Only later, the two returned to Tianjian Zone, and Jian Wushuang continued to collect other innate auras of 5 elements, and left it alone. Unexpectedly, 3,000 years later, the three met in this wild star field. Don't abandon your excellency. This time we are following the elders of Zongmen and come here to gain insights. The young man who called the Master of Stardust laughed. Don't abandon your excellency. Are you here for this land? In addition, the young woman who was called to be dominated by Star Rhyme asked with a playful blink. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly after hearing the words, and replied, Well, what about your elders? The Master of Stardust pointed his finger at the central high platform. An old man in the soap robe sitting next to the owner of the Feng family said, My parents and the old family owner are old and are talking about it. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, signaled to know. The Stardust dominated for a moment or two, and said, Don't abandon your lord, crouching tigers and dragons in this starry sky. If you want to take the soil, it is better to be careful. I heard that this time the starry sky the 3 major families in the region are all interested in this soil, especially the first day of the Qing family's pride, and Qingmu is bound to get this soil. Qingmu? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. The Stardust dominated the M sound, and his expression gradually became dignified. Yes, that Qingmu is the first genius of this Qing family. No, it should be said that this universe is a wild wasteland, the first genius under thousands of miles of stars. He is extremely talented, but after thousands of years of cultivation, he is already the most powerful among the invincible masters, and bears great fortune. When he was practicing at a young age, he had an adventure, and 3 Dao fruit came into the world and fell beside him. Later, when he traveled to the universe, he was recognized by the Demon Phoenix family, and obtained the blood of Demon Phoenix. Later, when he asked to dominate the realm, he actually caused a vision of the heavens and the earth, and he was recognized by the cosmic extreme treasure god Magic Halberd. Now, he has been perennially instructed by his ancestor at home and the Qing family, and his strength has no idea how terrible it is. His reputation is known to everyone in the wild wasteland of the universe. Although he has not yet achieved the supreme, almost everyone is convinced that in the 10 Chaos Ages, Qingmu will become the supreme. Even now, in the wild wilderness of the universe, there are already many people who call him Qing Shaozun. Qingmu Shaozun? Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, and his eyes filled with interest. Listening to the ruler of Stardust, this genius named Young Herd of Young Herdsmanship is indeed very powerful. Whether it is his own talent or the opportunity of creation, he is considered to be the best in this universe. Million years of achievement in the ultimate dominance, in the universe, in addition to his sword unparalleled, is definitely the most top grade. If it is placed in the depths of the universe, it is enough to compete with the sons of the immortal Holy Land and the sons of the great divine kingdoms. The Master of Stardust continued to say in a deep voice, It is rumored that Qingmu Shaozun's current strength, even if placed in Tianjiao and the herd of the starry sky, is enough to rival the existence of a giant. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, then smiled slightly, and said, So Qingmu Shaozun, why don't you participate in Shinkong Ancient Road? It seemed that I heard that Jian Wu didn't care too much in the bilingual language, and the Stardust Master had not spoken yet, so he saw the Star Duke Dozu saying, Don't abandon your lord, don't underestimate Qingmu Shaozuan. He didn't go to the Shinkong Ancient Road, but when the Shinkong Ancient Road opened, he happened to be retreating. After he went out, the Shinkong Ancient Road has passed halfway through. The Overlord Sword Wushuang of the ancient starry sky has also left. Qingmu Shaozuan has ambitious ambitions. His goal is to challenge the 10,000-year-old sword in the universe. The sword is supreme, and he has been named the first genius swordsman. When it comes to Qingmu Supreme, the Star Dominion is different from the solemn Stardust Dominion. Her face is full of excitement and worship, and I can't wait to talk to Jian Wushuang carefully about the legendary deeds of Qingmu. It can be seen that she has a lot of respect for that young husband. Stardust dominated the sight, and he couldn't help but stare at the Star Domain Dominion, then looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Don't abandon your lord, don't give Yuna general insight." Anyway. Jian Wushuang waved his hand, only feeling a little dumb inside. It turns out that, unknowingly, has become the object of challenge for many geniuses in the universe. The three were still chatting suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd, and I wonder who shouted, "Here are the three big families." All of a sudden, everyone in the audience looked up and looked at the sky. I saw above the sky, first a row of golden carriages came out of the air. This golden carriage is golden and shining. The horse-drawn carriage has double wings on its horseback, a single horn is borne on its forehead, and the golden auspicious cloud is trampled under its feet. It is the golden horn swallowing beast in the universe. In front of the wagon, a golden flag was inserted, and a huge Lai word was written. This is the relief of the three major families. Immediately after the golden carriage passed through the air, we saw a huge boat with the flag north inserted across the sky. This giant boat is extremely towering, like a mountain falling down, making a huge roar. Before this giant boat, two naked giants, backed by chains, dragged the towering giant boat forward. North of the three big families, on Nansha Island, someone was exclaimed. But more people remained silent, focusing their eyes on the tall figure who came alone. He was just one person, walking against the light. It was hard to see the looks, and he did not use any power, but he overwhelmed the audience. In front of this person, whether it is the golden carriage coming out of the air, or the towering giant boat that swept across the void, it is completely discolored. He seemed to be the son of the heavenly selection by nature. When Fang played, he didn't need any words to be the focus of attention. This person is the first day of the universe's wild wasteland. Chapter 43-57. Qingmu Shaozuan. The strongest genius recognized in the wild wasteland of the universe, whether it is talent or chance, is the extreme of the universe, and has not yet achieved the supreme deity, but he has been treated the same as the supreme. I saw him coming out of the sky, and the sun and the earth were stepped on by his feet, as if lifted by the sky from the sky, is the darling of the world. Qingmu Shaozuan. All of a sudden, everyone on Nansha Island shouted. Their expressions of enthusiasm and worship were like devout believers. The Star Master is also in this rank. At this moment, she is not like a master who is high above her, but more like a secular little girl who sees a flirtatious boy. Her expression is excited to the extreme, and she shakes the arms of Stardust, frantically calling. "Stardust, look at it fast. This is Qingmu Shaozuan." Stardust dominated the expression of helplessness, and glanced at Qingmu Shaozuan, and there was a gloom in his eyes. Both are the ultimate level, but the gap is too big. Is he young Qingmu? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked up. I saw Qingmu Shaozuan's handsome face, and the of abundance was like a jade. He looked down and looked down, his expression was indifferent, and he could not see any emotions. Immediately afterwards, I saw the owner of the Feng family sitting on the high platform stepping. His body shot out, and he greeted far away. "Qingmu Shaozuan, siblings, why are you even shocked?" The Wind family owner bent over and said with a smile. "If you want this piece of land, as long as you send someone to speak up, I will surely take the initiative to send it to you. Where can I let you deign to come and run in person?" Qingmu Shaozuan heard a slight glance at him, and said, "Since you have set the rules, and let everyone take this land by their own abilities, this is the rule of the block." As soon as this remark came to an end, the owner of the Wind family immediately slapped his and shouted, It is worthy of Qingmu Shaozuan, Jiao Yi. On Nansha Island, everyone else nodded. Qingmu Shaozun Jiao Yi. Qingmu Shaozun Jiao Yi. For a moment, the words of praise to Qingmu Shaozun were like terrifying sounds, boiling against the sky and heading for the sky. Jian Wushuang was in the midst of the crowd, and he didn't notice it. He touched his nose and couldn't help but feel a little funny. This Qingmu Shaozun's strength is unknown for the time being, but if he talks about the faction, I am afraid that he is inferior to him. After a while, Qingmu Shaozun sat down on the main seat with an expression of pride. The young talents of the other two families looked at Qingmu Shaozuan, who was holding the moon by the stars, and his looks were a little complicated. Little Qingmu. After a moment of hesitation, the people of these two families were saluting towards Qingmu Shaozuan. People have to learn to judge the situation. Qingjia is not weaker than their two supreme families, and Qingmu Shaozuan is likely to become the second largest supreme of Qingjia. At that time, the status of Qingjia will be far away. Beyond these two families, become the wild wilderness of the universe, and say the best monarch. Okay. Qingmu Shaozuan nodded saltily. For him, the young talents of these two families are also good, or the other heroes who are present, even the wild wilderness of the universe, and the entire universe of billions of stars and stars, as long as they have not achieved the supreme, they will not be regarded by him. He considered himself to be eligible to be his opponent. There was only one person, that is, the first day of his life, and the sword was the best sword. He is confident. Today, he has an eye on the entire universe and can fight him a little bit. Only swords are unparalleled. Even he has great confidence to be able to defeat Jian Wushuang within 100 strokes. This is his pride. Winds start from the clouds. He faintly looked at the owner of the Feng family next to him and said, "Yes." The owner of Fengjia quickly nodded, cleared his throat, got up and stood up, looking at the crowd under the platform. Shensheng said, "She soil is the treasure of the universe. It can spawn thousands of miles of star fields and endlessly. These treasures should be the strong ones. Therefore, our family is willing to donate the soil, so that the strongest in the audience can get the soil. And if you want to prove your strength, the rules to get Xiang are also simple. You just need to defeat all the opponents in the audience and let everyone serve you, then you are the owner of Xiang." I said so, do you understand? The words fell, and everyone nodded. It is such a truth that treasures reside in strong ones. Immediately, they looked at Qingmu Shaozuan one after another, their eyes flashing for a while. If the person who came this time is not Qingmu Shaozun, they still have the heart to compete for one or two, but when Qingmu Shaozun comes, no one has the confidence to defeat Qingmu Shaozun. I am afraid I will belong to Qingmu Shaozun. Yes, Qingmu Shaozuan is here. Who dares to grab something from him? Shi Yang will definitely belong to Qingmu Shaozun. Everyone talked. Sure enough, as they said, after seeing the voice fall, Qingmu Supreme stood up, looked at the audience indifferently, and said, "This piece of land, this seat is wanted, who wants to fight against this seat is it?" He didn't have a loud voice, but was full of power. No one answered. Seeing this, Qingmu Shaozuan became more and more proud in her eyes at the same time, a loneliness surged in her heart. Is the world so big that no one can be his opponent? It was not long before I saw an old man stepping out of the crowd, his face and airways. Qingmu Shaozun, when he was far away in Jiangyang Starfield, he had always heard that Shaozun had great strength. He met each other and wanted to come up and learn. After the old man walked out, someone suddenly exclaimed in the crowd, "Yuan Feng of Jiangyang Star Domain rules." Yuan Feng's is a long-established invincible master, one of the top powerhouses in the wilderness of the universe. Although Qingmu Shaozun is strong, but he has only practiced for tens of millions of years, and Yuan Feng's domination, only in the realm of invincible domination, has impregnated 10 chaotic eras. When it comes to the background, Qingmu Shaozun must be far not as good as Yuan Feng. This battle is exciting. Qingmu Shaozuan raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, looked up and down the Yuan Feng dominated, and said indifferently, 3 tricks. As long as you can take me, I will lose. That Yuan Feng dominated his face did not change. He still laughed, but his heart made a cry. Shaozun, the old man admits that you are strong, But you can beat me with 3 tricks, isn't it too big? Qingmu Shaozuan didn't lift his eyelids. He turned his right hand, and his shape was domineering. The platinum-colored halberd appeared in his hand. Stop talking nonsense, let's go. Boom. The next moment, Qingmu Shaozuan dominated towards Yuan Feng, and split it with a halberd. Suddenly, endless divine power spurted out, condensed on this platinum-golden halberd, faintly, but also heard a clear sound of foaming. In this euphorbia, there seems to be a phoenix born from a fire, soaring into the sky, and chanting in the world. Chapter 4358. The universe is the ultimate treasure, the magic halberd. It is rumored that when Qingmu Shaozun asked for his dominion, he caused a vision of heaven and earth. A sharp halberd radiated from the depths of the universe and fell into the hands of Qingmu Shaozun. He actively recognized the Lord, God's halberd. Besides that, Qingmu Shaozuan also bears the blood of the demon phoenix. Demon phoenix is a large branch of the phoenix family, and is fierce and aggressive, also known as Juhuang. In an instant, everyone was watching, discussing one after another, like several treasures, saying the supernatural power of Qingmu Shaozuan. The Star Rhyme Master is even more excited, and he continues to introduce to Jian Wushuang and Stardust Master. Look at it quickly, Qingmu Shaozun is going to shoot. This is the first time in 10,000 years that Qingmu Shaozun has shot. Jian Wushuang's expression was light, and he looked at Qingmu Shaozuan at will. I have to say, this Qingmu Shaozuan is indeed quite good. Before he shot it, his breath was not weaker than the Emperor Jinwu defeated by Jian Wushuang in the ancient road of Shinkong. And on the stage. Good job. There was a dignity in the eyes of Na Yuanfeng's master, and he did not dare to magnify it. I saw that his right hand was thrown, a glass abacus suddenly appeared in his hands. Fail. Qingmu Shaozun's expression was indifferent, and he lifted up the magical halberd, and pressed towards Yuanfeng's master. This halberd is so heavy that it descends like 3 mountains and 5 mountains, and it is powerful. Endless divine power, stirs all directions. When Yuan Feng's dominance changed, the halberd hadn't been pressed down yet, and he felt a back-like feeling, his hair covered with sweat. Go with. He stiffened his head and drank a few words, his 5 fingers quickly fiddled with the abacus. Hey! Suddenly, each abacus spins, as if shooting from the abacus like a meteor, welcoming this halberd. A loud roar came, and the entire Nansha Island was trembling. Countless dusts floated and formed white smoke. After the white smoke had dissipated, I saw Yuan Feng dominated half-knelt, his face turned into a liver color, and he continued to pant heavily. The Qingmu Shaozuan, who is holding a demon halberd, looks like her on the top, looks down at Yuan Feng, and calmly says, "You are defeated." Yuan Feng dominated, struggling to stand up from the ground, and arched his hands bitterly and said, "The power of Qingmu Shaozuan is second to none in the entire universe." After that, he retreated into the crowd lightly and heavily. It is worthy of Qingmu Shaozun, who is also dominated by invincibility, but Yuan Feng dominates. Qingmu Shaozun is really too strong. I think even the sword Wushuang, who was blown into the first genius of the universe, is far worse than Qingmu Shaozun. It's true that the reason why Jian Wushuang's fame manifests is largely because of the Temple of Life. If it comes to strength, it must not be the opponent of Qingmu Shaozun. Under Supreme, I am afraid that no one will be the enemy of Qingmu Shaozuan. Qingmu Shaozun is invincible. Everyone in the crowd admired. The star rhyme dominated the expression with excitement, a pair of beautiful eyes, full of admiration. The Stardust standing next to the master of Star Charm, the bitter smile on his face could not help more. In view of this situation, I'm afraid that as long as this Qingmu Shaozuan twiddles his fingers, the prince himself will leave him and turn into Qingmu Shaozun's embrace. Don't abandon your excellency, let me tell you, Qingmu Shaozun is very powerful. Xingyun dominated and looked back at Xiong Wushuang, blowing a smile. Well, yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. Is it just good? Xingyun dominated Wen Yang's mouth, but said nothing. After all, Jian Wushuang had saved her life. However, she had a sigh of relief inexplicably in her heart, and wished that Qingmu Shaozun could teach Jian Wushuang by hand, and let Jian Wushuo treat Qingmu Shaozun, and dare not to despise it in the slightest. On the Nansha Island, Qing Mu Shaozun's eyes awaited, his expression indifferent and proud. "Does anyone else have a shot?" he asked lightly. There was no response from the audience. It took a long time before a great man dominated by the invincible. However, this man is only a little stronger than Na Yuan Feng, and he was defeated by Qingmu Shaozuan under 2 moves. Time passed slowly. During this period, there were still some invincible masters coming out from the crowd, including the Tianjiao and Su Laro of the other 2 big families, asking for advice from Shaoqin Qingmu. It turned out that there were no surprises. These invincible masters, who had long been known in the wild wasteland of the universe, were less than 3 moves. They were defeated in the hands of Qing Mu Shaozun, and they became the footsteps of Qing Mu Shaozun's stone, highlighting Qing Mu Shaozun becoming more powerful and invincible. After an hour, no one dared to challenge Qing Mu Shaozun. "Are there no one? That piece of land is here." Qing Mu Shaozun's indifferent expression flashed a scorn, and then he turned and walked towards the high platform to receive the interest. "A herd of native chicken shit." Qing Mu Shaozuan shook his head. Seeing this, the owner of the Feng family quickly drew a large piece of soil from Chenkuan Ring. "Qing Mu Shaozun, who is your opponent in the realm of domination?" He laughed first, and then pushed forward, saying, "Sorozun, this is Shiliang." Qing Mu Shaozuan nodded, a flash of satisfaction flashed in his eyes, and stretched out his hands toward the soil crowd. Everyone looked at this scene, flashes of envy. Qing Mu Shaozun was already strong. Now with this piece of land, I am afraid that he will gain even more strength. At this moment, no one noticed that after the soil was taken out, a young man in a black robe with a white antelope mask flashed in his eyes. In this area, there is indeed a congenital aura of soil. Jian Wushuang felt the change from the bronze ancient tripod in Chenkuan Ring, and there was an irresistible joy in his eyes. He searched for tens of thousands of years, and the only lack of the aura of the 3 elements of the innate air of 5 elements, and finally found it. As long as he gets the qi of the sea soil, he can really open the bronze ancient tripod. The next moment, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, stepped out of the crowd, and said lightly, "Slow." The words fell, and everyone snorted suddenly, turning to look at Jian Wushuang. "Okay." Including Qing Mu Shaozuan on the high platform, holding his right hand to the soil and stagnation, he also turned his head and slowly looked at Jian Wushuang. "Do you want to challenge this seat?" He glanced up and down Jian Wushuang, frowned, and said in a cold tone. This man covered his head and didn't make a shot before, but made a noise when he was about to get Shiliang. Qing Mu Shaozuan flashed his disappointment. Jian Wushuang's expression remained unchanged, calmly asked, "No?" Qing Mu Shaozuan heard that his eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth gradually sneered. "Well, that seat is as you wish." "Hey!" The words fell, and I saw that he had taken back the limit of the universe in the ring of heaven and earth, the magic treasure of the treasure god, and appeared in his hands again. Chapter 43:59. At this moment, everyone was confused and said, "Who is this person challenging Qingmu Shaozuan? Does he want to die?" The ones who challenged Shaozuan before were all invincible masters who have long been known in the wild starfields of the universe. This person is not well known and is worthy to challenge Qingmu Shaozuan. Qingmu Shaozun, how can any cat or dog challenge? Everyone present shook their heads. Even the Stardust ruler was anxious, and shouted, "Do not abandon your excellency, what are you doing?" At that time, although Jian Wushuang rescued them and killed the person who pursued them, but that person was not the top ultimate master, could it be compared with Qingmu Supreme? As soon as he wanted to go forward to pull Sword Wushuang, he saw that Star Yun stopped him and shook his head. "Stardust, since you do not abandon your lord and do not accept Qingmu Shaozun, then let him go. Why bother with us?" When saying this, Star Rhythm dominated the eyes, with a touch of irony. Stardust dominated and looked back at her, his expression suddenly stunned. Is this the kind, playful childlike wife he knows? Star Rhyme, what nonsense are you talking about? What is nosy? Don't forget, you will never give up on your excellency, but our benefactor. Taking a deep breath, the Lord of Stardust looked at the Lord of Star Rhyme, as if looking at a stranger. Xingyun, I think you've been stunned by that Qingmu Shaozuan. You. Xing Yun's master was a little dissatisfied when he heard the words. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he saw the expression of Stardust's cold gradually, he couldn't help humming his eyes. So many people have challenged Qingmu Shaozun, and Qingmu Shaozun did not take them. It will be fine if you do not abandon your excellency, rest assured. The Lord of Stardust heard the words, and a look of hesitation flashed on his face. When he saw Qingmu Shaozuan walking down the platform with the magical halberd, he knew he was unable to stop the battle, and he sighed and said, I hope so. On the platform, Qingmu Shaozong looked down at Jian Wushuang and said with no expression, this seat, no matter who you are or where you come from, you listen well, as usual, you take the 3 strokes of this seat, this I think you win. Jian Wushuang heard a slight glance at him and said, hurry up, I'll hurry. In a hurry, Qingmu Shaozuan heard the words, and suddenly felt extremely anti-smiling. In this man's eyes, he took the first day of his magnificent and wild wasteland to be proud. What happened? I see you rushing to death. Qingmu Shaozuan snorted coldly, holding both halberds, fiercely chopped towards the sword Wushuang. This halberd is the shot of Qingmu Shaozun with anger, which is even more fierce than the previous might, and directly crushes the void, and the magic phoenix is dancing wildly. However, get ready for the second move. Jian Wushuang raised his eyelids slightly, turned his divine power slightly, and popped a finger gently. Suddenly, the divine power of the avenue horrified, covered on the fingertips of the sword, and flew towards the magical halberd that came from the fury. Hey! As if crushing the mountains and the sea with a single finger, the fierce and mighty divine halberd slashed at the sword Wushuang and gave a scream of screaming and flew out. Qingmu Shaozuan was shocked, and he took 3 steps back and forth to run the whole body of the divine power before he pressed down the huge power uploaded by the magic demon. Suddenly, Qingmu Shaozun's expression was startled, and he stared at Jian Wushuang tightly for a moment before he said coldly, no wonder you dare to be so ambitious. It turned out that you have some ability to rely on yourself. After a pause, he continued with a sneer, however, this halberd just used 30% of his strength just now. 30%. Jian Wushuang shook his head. If this Qingmu Shaozuan knew that he had not used even 1% of his power, how would he feel? Although he is still the master of the realm, whether it is the divine power transformed into the power of the avenue or the supernatural power, it is far from being comparable to the master. Regardless of any invincible master, in the swordless hands, they are just the ants that run to death. Even if it was the 9 kings of the calamity that were recognized as the first in the realm of domination, or the prison dragon that fell from the supreme divine realm, before the sword has no double sides, it cannot take 3 moves, let alone this young herd. The master's divine power and his avenue divine power are not a grade at all. Second move. Qingmu Shaozun sighed coldly, no longer suppressing his strength. Invincible Master Xiao broke out for the most. Suddenly, the violent wind rose sharply, roaring and roaring, forming a vortex storm. Standing at the center of the vortex storm, the young priest, like Huang Lingsha, is not visible. Mystery, punishment, boom. In an instant, the platinum-colored magic demon halberd in his hand suddenly changed. Fine vein-like fine lines covered the halberd. Qingmu Shaozuan stabbed into the sky fiercely. He actually guided the strength of the heavens and earth directly and descended countless shenlei. In the end, these gods' thunder fell on the magical halberds one after another, forming a horror thunderbolt similar to Tiger Thunder Dragon. When everyone around him saw this, they were shocked. It turns out that this is the true strength of Qingmu Shaozun. The true strength of Qingmu Shaozun is so horrible. It seems that Qingmu Shaozuan has moved a real fire. This mask is dead. Stardust dominated when he saw this. His face was suddenly anxious, and he shouted continuously to let the sword unparalleled. And that star rhyme dominated. His expression flashed under the instant worry about Jian Wushuang, which turned into a deeper worship of Qingmu Shaozun. My husband, it would be great if they were such strong men. She envy secretly, go to hell. Qingmu Shaozuan sneered. Boom tilde. Suddenly, this horrible of thunder, carrying the power of destroying the world, blasted towards the sword Wushuang. Get ready for the third move. However, Jian Wushuang's expression was still light, and he was just throwing his sleeves in the face of the horrifying thunder that made everyone scream. In this sleeve, the cloud and wind are extremely light, and no power can be seen, but it is vaguely felt, as if this sleeve throws out mountains, water, all things, and nature. Alas! This horror thunder hits the swordless sleeveless robe, just like a stone dripping on the water surface, ripples. Next moment, this godly thunder was even pumped away, and one turned at a faster speed, with more terrifying power, and hit Qingmu Shaozuan. How can it be? Qingmu Shaozun's complexion changed instantly, and he wanted to resist it. However, this god of thunder directly destroyed the dead, and hit Qingmu Shaozun's chest. The horrible might broke out, and a huge turbid mushroom cloud rose over Nansha Island. Cough. In the huge mushroom cloud, the uncomfortable coughing sound of Qingmu Shaozun was sounded. Immediately, everyone saw the original Feng Shenyu Lang, such as the Ling Chen, and the glorious Qingmu Shaozun. But at this moment, he was like a falling from earth, his black hair was blown up all over, his clothes were fragmented, his black chest was exposed, and his wolf was trembling to the extreme. Suddenly, the whole audience froze and fell into petrification. Chapter 4360. Damn! The next moment, Qingmu Supreme swept up from the ground, and looked at Jian Wushuang hardly. His face was extremely blue. From an early age, he is the proud of heaven, the beloved of heaven and earth, and his practice is smooth and smooth. Born with the fruit, if you go out casually, you will get the blood of the magic phoenix. Even if you break through a realm, you can make the ultimate arrogant to recognize the Lord. No matter where he went, he was only praised and admired by him. Because of all kinds of encounters, he became extremely arrogant. He was so arrogant that he believed that the entire universe, as long as it was below the Supreme, no one was his opponent. Even the rumored sword was cut to the extreme, and he was named the sword's first talent in the world, but only slightly into his eyes. Today, however, he was easily defeated by a masked man who didn't know where to come from. This pride and arrogance that he has developed for tens of millions of years was trampled under his feet, crushed and trampled down. This is an embarrassment never before. A fierce anger raged on his chest, and he wanted to burn him. Next moment. Damn it. Qingmu Shaozuan twisted the blood vessels on his forehead and growled, "Magic Phoenix changes." Boom. Suddenly, his blood was boiling all over his body, and a mysterious rune emerged from the body. Hey! Immediately afterwards, a pair of flame-shaped wings spread out on his back, 10 feet wide. At his neck, 8 more heads were twisted to give birth. The magic phoenix is a branch of the phoenix family. It has 9 heads and is extremely powerful. The awakening of the bloodline is still continuing, and more horrible changes are constantly being made on Qingmu Shaozuan. Suddenly, are you performing acrobatics? Jian Wushuang glanced at him lightly, stretched out his right hand in the direction of him, and spread his 5 fingers slowly. If this Qingmu Shaozuan is really the demon phoenix, his sword unparalleled is also interested in seeing 1 or 2, but the result is just a half-human and half-phoenix monster, and he naturally does not want to waste time. He had slaughtered the real dragons, not to mention this defective product. Come on. Jian Wushuang 5 fingers slammed into the void. Suddenly, she was immersed in the transformation, and the young man of Qingmu, who had various gorgeous changes in the divine body, seemed to be holding his throat by the invisible big hand. What is this? Qingmu Shaozuan struggled. He felt that grasping his divine power seemed to be in harmony with heaven and earth. The power of his demon phoenix after his awakening could not remove the power of this avenue at all. The next moment, he saw that Jian Wushuang grabbed his neck and lifted it, as if he was holding a chick. You, let go of me. Qingmu Shaozun's sword. Wushuang held his right hand in the void, his wings fluttered on his back, and his hands and feet kicked wildly, angrily to the extreme. He still has no magic power at the bottom of the box, he has not really awakened the state of the magic phoenix, and as a result he was caught in the hands of Jian Wushuang, and he was unwilling to the extreme. His Excellency, 3 moves have passed, you lost. Jian Wushuang let go of his hand, shook his head and said lightly. Having said that, Jian Wushuang no longer cares about him, and walks towards the soil on the high platform. For today's Jian Wushuang, only the Supreme can he really awaken his spirit. As for these masters, he has no interest in slaughter. This Qingmu Shaozuan arrogant and powerful, but in his opinion, it is just a frog at the bottom of the well that has never been to the depths of the universe. Unconsciously, the audience was extremely dead. Everyone stared at Jian Wushuang blankly, all eyes were shocked to fall down, and their mouths could be opened to put an egg. Qingmu Shao lost. The invincible barren land is invincible and has the title of Young Respect. Qingmu Young Respect, who was given the son of the choice, is so defeated. They stared at Jian Wushuang stunned. From beginning to end, Jian Wushuang was just a finger, a sleeve, and a grab. Anyone could see it. Jian Wushuang was obviously easy to deal with and was quite capable. The star rhyme dominated his expression with a dull expression. He couldn't seem to believe the fact, and said chaotically in his mouth, "Impossible, absolutely impossible." Qingmu Shaozun, however, is invincible and cannot be defeated. Silhouette me. Jian Wushuang swept to the high platform, watching the Wind family owner said. The Wind family owner heard a tremble in his heart, and there was embarrassment on his face. Everyone knows that this soil has long been the thing that Qingmu Shaozun has decided. The so-called rules and tests are only a form for Qingmu Shaozun. However, the Wind family owner did not expect that Jian Wushuang, an uninvited guest, was killed halfway and easily defeated Qingmu Shaozun. If he offered him this way, he would undoubtedly offend the youth. There is more than one young priest in the Qing family. That is the supreme power that truly has the supreme power. I said it last, give it to me. Jian Wushuang saw the cold in his eyes, and his eyes flashed away. Suddenly, the owner of the Wind family only felt a big terror between life and death, and he was trembling. He didn't dare to hesitate anymore, and he trembled and offered the soil. Sword Wushou took the soil, and a smile appeared on his face unconsciously. The congenital 5 elements of qi, finally collected successfully. It's time to really start the bronze ancient tripod. Jian Wushuang's heart was full of thoughts, and speaking, he was also looking forward to what the bronze ancient tripod would look like after the 5 elements were completed. However, he didn't notice. The distant Qingmu Shaozuan, his face was already gloomy to the extreme. He clenched his fists tightly, a wave of humiliation turned into a violent murder, and he was stirred in the chest. This person can never be the master. No master in the universe can defeat me. Yes. This person must be supreme. Only the supreme will be far superior to me. Qingmu Shaozun's murderous flashes, and his arrogant arrogance, he will never admit that in this world, someone who can dominate the realm can defeat him. He Qingmu Shaozuan, the protagonist of this universe, is the darling of heaven and earth. How could he be defeated? Just when Jian Wushuang was about to pick up and was about to leave Tianhuang Starfield, he couldn't hold back anymore, shattered his waist bag, and shouted with a distorted expression, "What about the Supreme? The Supreme must not shame me. Please, ancestors. Boom tilde." The voice fell, and in the middle of Tianhuang Starfield, a white-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes, and patted him directly across the distance. The speed of this palm reached the extreme, blinking in 1,000 miles, the mighty, and constantly growing, finally covering the sky, and pressing hard against the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, the Nansha Islands were torn apart, and the surrounding sea set off thousands of waves, and numerous seawater rolled up, connecting heaven and earth, forming a turbulent water column. Everyone on the island was scattered as birds and beasts, terrified. The sword, which had already been swept up, swept to the sky, her pupils shrank instantly. Extreme. At the next moment, the power of Jian Wushuang's whole body exploded, turning into countless sword gas interweaves, forming a palm, and heading towards that mighty one, causing the supreme capsized heaven and earth to collide away. Chapter 4361. These two palms are like the two sides colliding together, constantly rubbing and colliding, making a sound of destruction. Boom boom boom. Countless horrible forces overflowed, exploded in the air, and blew up hundreds of feet. The Nansha Islands are directly torn apart, and numerous seawater roars and rolls up, forming a huge wave, just like a flood monster opening his mouth to bite. In just a moment, the Nansha Islands were flooded, as if they were in chaos. All this seems to be a long time, but in one breath, after the two giant palms collided, they disappeared. Jian Wushuang hunted in black, with black hair flying, and stepped back, depressing the horrible supreme power from his hand. Extreme. Jian's eyes were cold, his eyes were looking towards the place where the giant palm came. There, a white-haired old man was walking slowly. Every step he took seemed to be ordinary, but it seemed as if he was stepping on a node in space, and it directly spanned thousands of miles. For 3 consecutive steps, he stood in front of Jian Wushuang. This person, who is one of the directors of the Tianhuang starfield, is the Qing family's ancestor Qinghe Supreme. Qinghe Supreme, 200 chaos before the achievement of the Supreme position, 100 chaos epochs, breaking through the medium Supreme, although it is not a high Supreme, but the same strength. Sir, it's not appropriate to bully a junior, I assent it. Qinghe Supreme had white hair, and looked at Jian Wushuang's eyes up and down. The sword has no expression on both sides, and now he is supreme again, even if he doesn't use the sword too much, he has no fear in his heart. The only thing he was slightly worried about was revealing his identity. But looking at it like this, it seems that Qinghe Supreme has considered him supreme. After Jian Wushuang thought a little, he understood the cause and effect relationship. Under the role of the antelope mask, he was covered with breath, and the Supreme could not see his depth. It is normal to see through his cultivation. Thought of this, Jian Wushuang no longer feared in the heart. This seat does not kill him, it is already in the face of your Supreme Master Qinghe. Jian Wushuang said hoarsely. He knew that since Qinghe Supreme had mistaken him as Supreme, he might as well just pretend to the end. Then, Your Excellency, said the old man, would like to thank you. Qinghe Supreme closed his eyes. You can understand this. Jian Wushuang nodded indifferently. The Qinghe Supreme heard the words, and suddenly couldn't help laughing out loud as if he heard something funny. Sir, you deceived my people and made them my treasure. Would you like to thank your husband? It's the biggest joke in the world. At the same time, I saw that Qingmu Shaozuan stepped forward. First, respectfully, Qinghe Shaozuan made a ritual. Then he turned his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang fiercely. Our ancestor, it was this man who robbed me of my soil, wounded me, and humiliated me in front of everyone. My ancestor, you must decide for me, punish this person severely, you must not let him leave. Jian Wushuang heard the words, his expression gradually became colder, he looked at Qinghe Supreme and said, Qinghe, are you going to stop this seat now? I saw that Qinghe Supreme touched the head of Qingmu Shaozuan first, and let him go to the side first, and then he smiled and said, Sir, you and I are both supreme. If you want to go, you can, of course, but you have to return the old man's grandson's soul to him before leaving. His interest. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help laughing, his voice was cold. Let us not say that this land is not his, even if it is his, this seat is taken, what can you do? The words fell, Jian Wushuang's divine power was surging, and he could not stop looking at Qinghe Supreme, and he was overbearing to the extreme. I don't know why. Qinghe Supreme's face froze for a moment, then sneered, then you have to see if you have this strength. Boom tilde. He grabbed his right hand into the void, directly grabbed a black 7-star magic knife, and hacked at the sword unparalleled. This knife may seem random, but after splitting it, it turned out to be a myriad of energy howls, all kinds of laws were derived, stuffed between heaven and earth. For a moment, the entire sky was filled with this sword. On the sea of the Nansha Islands, many dominated the water and stood on the water. Looking at the congested world, it shook the world. This is the power of Supreme. With Qinghe Supreme shot, this mask man is afraid to escape in danger. Not necessarily. You didn't hear Qinghe Supreme just now. This mask person is also supreme. Everyone discussed. Among the crowd, the Stardust dominated the weird expression for a while. He remembered that when Jian Wushuang rescued them 5,000 years ago, the cultivation revealed that there was only the ultimate dominating realm. Could it be that Your Excellency broke through in these 5,000 years? Stardust dominated a look of doubt. The star rhyme standing next to him, after a moment of stagnation in his expression, suddenly said sourly, "No wonder he can defeat Qing Mu Shao Zun, it turned out to be the supreme, what a skill to bully and small. To shut up." When the Stardust Master heard this, his face suddenly changed, and he snapped sharply, "Extreme behavior, should I wait to be speculative? What's more www.mtl Novelle. Don't abandon your excellency or our life-saving benefactor. Star rhyme, if I hear you dare to stigmatize your abandonment again, I will blame me for breaking with you and breaking the affair." After speaking, he didn't care what the expression of the Star Dominion was, he turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang again, and anxiety appeared on his face. Over 9 days. Jian Wushuang looked at this as a practice, like the dark blade of a star river, and sneered, "Extreme power, but so. A tilde." He flipped his right hand, and Wu Wei's Excalibur appeared in his hand. Chopper star. Instantly, countless energy condensed in the sword without hands, forming a sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet. This time, the star strength Zhen Hong, evoked by the power of the avenue, no longer appears silver, but is dazzling to the extreme, turning into blue. With his ascension, the power of the sword-cutting sword art is naturally incomparable, too much stronger than in the past. Cut. Jian Wushuang drank, 5,000 Zhong Zhenhong immediately chopped down, and the dark collision that turned into a perfect match. With a blast, the sword unveiled and stepped forward, bullying into it. Arrogant. Qinghe Supreme eyes flickered, and stepped directly in front of it. Extreme divine art, Feng Tianzhe. Click. The knives are densely packed with air, overlapping and intertwining with each other, turning into a net, blocking the sword's unparalleled path. Open the sky. Open heaven. Open heaven. The sword unparalleled cut 3 swords in succession, and each sword cut was full of the charm of the avenue. The Kaitian Jianmang, which was blessed by the power of the avenue, became more sharp and sharp, tearing the knife net directly. Kill. Sword unparalleled step forward, and Qinghe Supreme against thousands of moves. For the fastest update without error reading, please visit. Chapter 4362. A tilde. The swords add up, a series of Mars splashes, and the horrible energy overflow keeps blasting away, making the whole sky star field bang. The magic power of the avenue of tens of thousands of times in Jian Wushuang has not been retained at all, and it is tilted out of the hand like a splash of mountains and rivers, which directly forms a violent storm composed of sword gas and bombardier. Okay, keep going. Jian Wushuang felt the majestic power from the 7-star magic blade in the hands of Qinghe Supreme, and his warfare surged to the extreme. He laughed aloud, arrogant, and the Wu Weeping Sword offensive in his hand became even more violent. It's been too long, since Jian Wushuang fought a battle with the prisoner dragon in Shinkong-gulu, he has never encountered such a lively battle. Fighting in the past is not too much worse than him, and can be crushed with a finger, or it is the supreme divine realm, which can only be slaughtered with the strength of the Taro Excalibur. Arrogant. Qinghe Supreme felt the sharp force from the blade, his face became more gloomy. This power is not the supreme divine power, nor is it the dominant power, but the power of the avenue that has been sublimated as much as possible. The power of the road is a strange power that some supreme have not yet realized. In the universe, swords are used to enlighten the Tao. There are not many who ask for supremacy, and even fewer who have learned the power of the avenue. Which one will this person be? Qinghe Supreme's eyes flickered, while fighting against Jian Wushuang, the mountains and seas overturned, Shenju Lushan, and quickly thought in his heart. The word sword warrior sword flashed in his mind, but was quickly crossed by him automatically. Sword warrior sword did not fake, but sword warrior sword did not dominate the realm, although it had also beheaded the supreme, but it all depended the power of the tailored Excalibur would not be so powerful. Supreme God, 7 waves. Qinghe Supreme watched Jian Wushuang rushing towards him, and drank again, the 7-star magic sword in his hand suddenly change. I saw the 7-star beads inlaid on the blade of the magic knife gradually light up, each one lights up, the power of the 7-star magic knife is stronger. Cut. Qinghe Supreme opened his mouth coldly, and lifted his sword towards the sword and unparalleled. The sword has two swords to block, and the tiger's mouth can't help but hemp. This sword is twice as powerful as the power generated by Qinghe Supreme, who just shot with all his strength. This is not over yet. Qinghe Supreme stepped into the void, and the 7-star magic knife was cut again. Second knife. Third knife. The fourth knife. When Qinghe Supreme cut the fifth knife, Wei Yineng suddenly increased 5 times. Jian Wushuang couldn't stand it anymore. He was cut off by Qinghe Supreme, and slammed into the deep sea, setting off waves and triggering a tsunami. Old ancestor. Kill him. Seeing this, Qingmu Shaozuan suddenly shouted, a rush of joy on his face. He looked at the place where Jian Shoshuang fell, and there was a hint of cruelty on his face. What about you, Supreme? I am Qingmu Shaozuan, who is the protagonist of this era, who has the best luck in this world. Deep in the ocean floor, Jian was eyes twinkled. He is not incapable of dealing with the 7 waves of divine magic. As long as he can use the divine body, or the night sword and the daybreak sword technique, he can easily break it, but in that case, there will inevitably be exposed risks. Well, it's time to try your power. Jian Wushuang's body sank quickly, his right hand turned over, and a bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hand. On this bronze ancient ding-ding body, there are towering giant trees spreading branches, flames spreading, forming lines, and sharp gold color imprinting the whole body, and even more torrential water flows freely. In the past 10,000 years, he continued to refine the ancient bronze dings, and finally completely refined the ancient bronze dings. Now he can not only control the bronze ancient tripod perfectly, but also attack the innate 5 elements of the ancient bronze tripod. When Jian Wu stepped on his feet, he suddenly blasted a large pit in the deep sea, and the whole man burst into the air, breaking the sea. Go with. Jian Wushuang's right hand was pushed fiercely, and the bronze ancient dinger spun down suddenly, making a sound like the beginning of the Chaos Avenue in the universe, hitting Qinghe Supreme. And that Qinghe Supreme, the 7th sword has been cut off. This knife eclipses heaven and earth, and the sun and moon are dim. If it is in the cosmic starry sky, it is enough to split several stars directly into nothingness. Immediately, you saw the intersection of the knife and the knife. At this moment, the world turned into a dead silence, and all the sound waves were overwhelmed by the explosion of the two. Immediately afterwards, a horrifying scene took place. With an entire territory of hundreds of millions of miles, in the universe's wildest starfield, the largest starfield in the wild, it broke open numerous void cracks at the same time. The land here is crushed into nothingness. I do know how many innocent people have been hit and killed by this shockwave. Boom boom. A storm is brewing, and the world is in a short darkness. Extreme fights, every day is devastating. Immediately, he saw the bronze ancient tripod rushing out of the explosion center, and he didn't wait for Qinghe Supreme to slash the 7th sword and hit him on the chest of Qinghe Supreme. Puff. Suddenly, Qinghe Supreme deity cracked for a while, and a yellow wax flashed on his face. He then took 100 steps back to unload the great power from the bronze ancient tripod. The bronze ancient tripod turned back and returned to the sword without hands. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and said hoarsely, Qinghe, do you want to stop this seat now? Qinghe Supreme's complexion was cloudy. He stared at the bronze ancient tripod in Jianhua's hands, and there was a thick dread in his eyes. This tripod vaguely, he seems to have seen this bronze ancient tripod on any record, but the time is too long, he does not remember it carefully, and the ancient tripod lacks a foot, and the universe in his impression Chong Bao also looks a little different, making him uncertain. The next moment, he took a deep breath and replied coldly, Your lord is awesome, but it's a bit naive to want to leave because of this. After finishing, he turned his head sharply and looked at a void, said Extreme Lieutenant Supreme, Beiming Supreme, I and the other 3 families have lost their teeth, and when facing the adversary, they will advance and retreat together. When do you see? The voice fell, and saw the void in which Qinghe Supreme looked, suddenly twisting. Immediately, in a light sigh, the 2 Supremes stepped out of the void. The name on the left was covered with cold, and he stepped down 1 step, forming ice directly on his feet, and a trace of frost hanging on his eyebrows. It was the old ancestor of Beijia, the Supreme Beiming. and the one on the right is a man wearing a soiled robe full of stains and looks as thin as an old beggar on the street. Blind old man. This person is the ancestor of Liejia, one of the three major families. At the same time, he is also the highest of the three supremes, who has been promoted to the supreme for many years. Chapter 4363. After the two supremes stepped out, they were like the Dingfengzi who set down the storm. The mountains and rivers overturned were calm. Beijing's ancestor Beiming Supreme, Liejia's ancestor Liejia Extreme. Suddenly, everyone shook. Three Supreme. What kind of line is this? I remember the last time that the three supremes of the heavenly stars were all together, but before the three chaos period, Judy Pavilion wanted to establish a branch in the heavenly stars. Unexpectedly, this mask person has attracted the three supremes. Now, no matter who this mask person is, I'm afraid he will die. Immediately, everyone quickly discussed. And the Stardust dominated, and his heart tightened instantly. When he wanted to speak, he saw the elders of Tianjianzong standing in front of him, holding his shoulders, with a serious expression. Stardust, my husband looks, it turns out that you have an old relationship with this mask man, and you just talked for him before, but now, if you don't want to bring us Tianjianzong's great disaster, you will immediately cut off all relations with him. Stardust dominated when Yang's face slightly changed, and gritted his teeth and explained, Uncle, don't give up on your life once saved me. Also, please take a shot and stop this fight. The elder Genzong gave him a glance that day, and snorted coldly, you really deserve me, Master Sha. I am invincible, but where is the right to stop the supreme war? Furthermore, Mo said he just saved your life, even if he saved the entire Tianjianzong, and now he is in great trouble, and we will not repay him, we will already be the biggest reward. The Stardust Master wants to say more, and then sees the nearby Star Rhythm Master pulled him and said, Stardust, you just listen to Master Sha, don't give yourself trouble. Stardust dominated when Yang's face hesitated for a moment or two, then immediately lowered his head and sighed. Over 9 days, the three supremes stood side by side. Standing on the left, Beiming Supreme with a frost on his frown sighed and said, Sir, you and I are the supreme of the universe. It's not easy to get to this step. It's just a patch of soil, so why wait? Life and death. After a pause, Beiming Supreme continued to say, Sir, the old man assures you, as long as you put down the soil, you can leave at any time. We will never stop it. What? After he finished speaking, the three supreme masters all stared at Jian Wushuang, waiting for Jian Wushuang's answer. Swordless pair of pedals was empty, his expression was gloomy. If only Qinghe Supreme is okay, his sword is unshakable, but it is a bit tricky for the three supremes to come together. In particular, the blind old man was fiercely enshrined, and the threat he brought to him was even more horrible than the sum of these two supreme sums. Even if Jian Wushuang achieved a breakthrough, no matter how powerful he would not be the opponent of the three great sums. If in the past, Jian Wushuang might have really given up and left, after all, in this world, it is not only here that there is congenital aura of soil, and it is a big deal to find it. However, the cosmic race of the universe is about to start. At that time, all the nations will arrive, and his sword is inevitable, and he can only confront those top forces again. Therefore, as long as he intensively improves his strength during this period, he will not be able to protect himself but also the Jedi to counterattack after the end of the universe race. This piece of soil cannot be allowed. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked faintly at these three supremes, saying indifferently, What if I refuse to let this piece of soil? The words came to an end, and the audience was shocked. Everyone did not expect that under the pressure exerted by the three supreme masters, Jian Wushuang still behaved his own way and dedicated himself. Sir, do you think clearly? Beiming Supreme sighed again, and seemed to be sorry for Jian Wushuang's decision. Beiming, tell him so much for what? Kill it. That Qinghe Supreme laughed angrily, and the 7-star magic knife appeared in his hand again, scoring a black brilliance. Also, Beiming Supreme shook his head, and no longer said, a ray of frost attached to his arm. Next moment, kill. Qinghe Supreme waved his right hand. In a flash, The 7-star magic knife in his hand turned into a pair of exercises again. After splitting it, it was like Tianhe rolled up, and as if chaos had begun to open, the entire Tianhuang starfield was occupied by this knife. Under this sword, heaven and earth seemed to be trained into a front line, and all the light was lost in everyone's eyes. And that Beiming Supreme is a 5-finger grab, and the entire South China Sea boiled instantly. The whole sea of hundreds of millions of tons of water rolled up, turned up against the current, and fluttered towards the sword without a match. The whole sea and the sea are all hanging high in the sky. What a shocking picture. Seal. Beiming Supreme sighed softly. Suddenly, the sky was hanging upside down, and the endless seawater shot towards swordless warriors were frozen and turned into millions of miles of snow. The entire starfield is directly transformed into a snow and ice world. Extreme power. Change the world every day. The strongest, Lai Zun, has been in a state of contemplation after looking at Jian Wushuang attentively, frowning slightly, and not thinking about what to do. Good job. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and his eyes burst into 3 inches. Facing the force of the extinct swordmang and ice-scratching force, he struck his right foot hard, and the whole man rose into the sky. Immediately, a bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, looked down at the bronze ancient tripod in his hand, and muttered to himself, "Release the true glory." Innate fire, burned. Boom. Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod trembled frantically, and the flame rune on the tripod shone loudly. A horrible and hot breath that could not be described in any words radiated from Jiu Ding. Next moment, cool. A magenta flame blasted out suddenly from the bronze ancient tripod. In just a moment, this monstrous flame emanated, covering millions of miles of territory, directly destroying the insulted sword blade and the thousands of miles of ice. Flame overwhelming flames. The eyes are the flames, the sun and the moon are the flames. The entire sky star field instantly turned into a flame dome. This is the fire that burns the sky. Between the two, it seems that it is not an order of magnitude at all, whether it is the destruction of the world and the annihilation of the world that has caused Shenzhou's land to sink, or the mobilization of water in the sea and the transformation into ice and snow. After this flame, they were all crushed and collapse. At this moment, everyone was stunned, all looked up at Jian Wushuang, staring at each other. I saw standing in the middle of the flame, holding a bronze wooding sword, unparalleled, like the Lord of Fire, the god of arson, who dominated the flame. And that flame, after breaking the 2 supremes, continued to attack the 3 supremes in an extremely overbearing posture. Suddenly, Qinghe Supreme and Beiming Supreme shook with anger, and there was a look of anger in their eyes. Chapter 4364. It is rare to be able to mobilize the innate aura of fire. Only the blind old man, wearing a shabby robe, with a thin build, returned to normal after a look of surprise. He stepped out 1 step, and a great amount of divine power poured out between his hands, turning into a mask to protect the 3. Pentium came, all the way innate Dinghua, beating on this mask, but actually made a continuous snoring noise, and for a moment, there was no way to take this golden mask. The congenital Dinghua burned this mask before it melted and burned a layer, and more supreme divine power poured out to prevent the erosion of the congenital Dinghua gas. Okay. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and there was a slight resignation in his eyes. He wanted to make a slap in the air and use the instinct of Dinghua to burn these 2 supremes, but now, it seems that the supreme martyr has shot, and the power is worse. However, the sword is unparalleled and discouraged. This bronze ancient tripod has not yet awakened, it already has the power to kill the supreme. Once the perfect innate aura of 5 elements is collected, the changes of the 5 elements act as chaos. This bronze ancient tripod will truly produce a qualitative leap. I can't kill them. But. Jianhua's eyes twisted slightly, looking at the frightened side to Qingmu Shaozuan, sneer, go with. Suddenly, in the endless instinct of Dinghua Qi, a fire snake was suddenly set off and rushed towards Qingmu Shaozuan. His sword is unparalleled in his life, but it doesn't mean that he can let anyone use his soft persimmons at will. This Qingmu Shaozuan threatened twice that his sword is unparalleled, and sword unparalleled had already killed him. Cool. The fire is surging. Qingmu Shaozuan looked at the fuchsia fire snake that rushed at him, and he was frightened by two wars, his face horrified. You dignified, what kind of skill is it to kill me as a master? If you have the courage, then bring down the cultivation to the master. How about fighting with me? Qingmu Shaozuan first glanced at Qinghe Supreme, the old ancestor at home, and then shouted hard. The frog at the bottom of the well. Jian Wushuang shook his head, disdained to talk to him at all. When that Qinghe Supreme saw this scene, the raging Chaojian Wushuang roared, if you kill Qingmu, my Qing family will never die without you. He hasn't finished talking yet. Congenital Dinghua Qi immediately rapped Qingmu Shaozuan. Right, because there is no left to me. Suddenly, in the inborn fire, there was a terrible scream from Qingmu Shaozuan. However, only in a short time, the tragic sound came to an abrupt end, and Qingmu Shaozuan disappeared into the ashes. In an instant, the audience turned into a dead silence. In the wild wilderness of the universe, Qingmu Shaozuan, who is revered by many people and has the title of the Son of Choice, has fallen. Seeing this scene, Qinghe Supreme felt that his heart was bleeding and his expression was distorted to the extreme. Everyone doesn't know what Qingmu Shaozun is supposed to accompany with the natural fruit and the possession of the atmosphere, but it is his Qinghe Supreme that operates behind the scenes. The Dao fruit was put down by him, and he got the blood of the demon phoenix, which he asked for at a great cost to the demon phoenix family. Even the demon halberd he pulled down his old face and promised countless benefits to the supreme old friend. Come. All he does is to create an invincible heart for Qingmu Shaozuan from below, so that he can firmly believe in the path of spiritual practice, cut his thorns and break through the supreme. However, with this fire, the pains that he spent countless costs and countless hours, were all destroyed. This makes Qinghe Supreme instantly crazy. Whoever you are, this life and this world, I Qinghe will slaughter you all the door, slap your whole family, and let you enjoy the world's greatest pain and torture. Qinghe Extreme growled. It's up to you. Jian Wushuang sneered, and then said, I'm leaving today, and no one of you can keep it. The words fell, Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet, and suddenly blasted towards the sky outside the starry sky. The endless flame was retrieved by the sword unparalleled, as if the sword had returned to the sheath, and re-entered the bronze ancient tripod. I saw the innate Dinghua returned to the bronze ancient tripod, the entire South China Sea disappeared, and the original hundreds of millions of tons of frozen seawater were all evaporated, and the entire sea became an endless pit. The sky is full of water vapor after seawater evaporates, which makes it hard to see. Want to run? The fierce brow frowned, and then said coldly, the old man has to see. Who are you, the hidden mouse? Tian Tong, open. I saw Lai Zun's right hand swiping into his eyes. Originally, only the white eyes, suddenly lit up endless redness. In this view, the sword that has radiated far away Wushuang seems to be seen through immediately, whether it is cultivated in the realm or the true appearance, it is seen through. The next moment, Lai Zun's body shook, and his original complexion suddenly changed, and he suddenly lost his voice. He is the master. As soon as this sentence came to an end, everyone was shocked, as if a bomb had been dropped, and everyone was uproaring. What? Dominate the realm? Dominate the supreme? Did you make a mistake? Defeating Qingmu Shaozuan, the masked man who has crushed Qinghe and Beiming Supreme, and has dealt with the three supremes for so long, just dominates the realm? In the universe, is there such a strong master? At this moment, everyone was crazy, and their eyes were horrified and fell down, terrifying. However, this is not the end. Relief Supreme continued to say, if there is nothing wrong with this seat, he is a sword unparalleled. Boom tilde. With this voice falling, it is tantamount to dropping a blockbuster in everyone's heart again, setting off a stormy sea. The Beiming Supreme and the Qinghe Supreme, who had already changed their faces, were trembling again and did not dare to channel. What? He is swordless. The next moment, the three looked at each other, and their faces were full of ecstasy. Ha 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 ha, the sword unparalleled that the whole universe is looking for has been found by us. There was a strong greed in the eyes of the three. Jian Wushuang, the famous 3 words in the universe, Only killing Jian Wushuang will get the identity of a disciple of the dragon tribe, and also enjoy the eternal blessing of the dragon tribe. In addition, there are rewards from 4 other top powers, such as billions of cosmic source stones, such as 5-star domain resources and so on. In addition, there is also the Tara Excalibur that is coveted by all races. That is the invincible treasure of the truly famous universe. Including the bronze ancient tripod used by Jian Wushuang just now, it is obviously equally extraordinary. It is far beyond the existence of the universe treasure. There are too many benefits. Thinking of this, the 3 Supremes are crazy. Catch up and kill swordsman. Huh. The 3 of them stepped on their feet, all erupting into the supreme divine power of the whole body, and blasting towards the sword unparalleled. Chapter 4365. Damn. Jian Wushuang turned his head to look at the 3 supreme masters, and his expression was somber that he could drip water. He counted so many things, but did not expect that the Lai Ling Supreme had a pair of eyes that could see through the world's delusions and look directly at the essence. Now, he wants to hide his identity again, for fear it is impossible. Also, since you like chasing, I will give you a big gift. Jian Wushuang reached out and touched the hilt of the tailored Excalibur sword hidden behind the black robe, and a corner of his mouth evoked a cold smile. Call out. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet and blasted towards the outer sky. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled, you come to the door yourself, still want to escape now? The 3 Supremes looked at each other and laughed. At this moment, even Qinghe Supreme, who had just experienced the pain of losing his grandson, had long forgotten the pain, and all that remained was the greed for Jian Wushuang's rewards and the treasures on Jian Wushuang's own body. The 3 followed closely behind, and soon disappeared into the sky star field. Nansha Island. Everyone looked at the 4-sword Wushuang who left, their mouths widened, and they could not return to God for a long time. It wasn't until a long time before I heard a spitting sound. Have you heard that? Lai Ling Supreme said just now that the masked man is swordsman. I heard that Jian Wushuang did not become strong because of the Tai Luo Excalibur. He had just shaken the 3 Supremes without using the Tai Luo Excalibur at all. It seems that the strength of Jian Wushuang is seriously underestimated in the universe. I also said before that Qingmu Shaozuan could definitely defeat Jian Wushuang easily. Now it seems that my eyelids are too shallow and the frog at the bottom of the well. Someone said that Qingmu Shaozuan, the master who was able to crush Jian Wushuang, said with a bitter smile. Jian Wushuang is the true first day of the world, overwhelming contemporaries. Qingmu Shaozun, farther away, more people looked at Jian Wushuang's disappearing back, his eyes awed and envious. Everyone is the ultimate dominator. However, Jian Wushuang's strength is already different from them. Only at this moment did they believe that there is really more than the realm of in the universe, and they can shake the supreme existence. The other side of the Spratly Islands. Star rhythm dominated the goddess. Before Jian Wushuang defeated Qingmu Shaozun, she also thought that it was only Jian Wushuang fighting for cultivation to bully the junior. Until now, she knew Jian Wushuang was also the ultimate dominating realm. His invincible fantasy and worship suddenly shattered. It turns out that he has the sword unparalleled. The star rhyme murmured to himself. Xingyun, that Qingmu Shaozuan compares with Jian Wushuang, just like the pearl of rice grain is better than Haoyue. You have no eyes. Stardust sighed next to him, and immediately looked at the place where Jian Wushuang disappeared. Just like your husband. Starfield outside the domain. Sword warriors turned into a slash, galloping forward. The 3 supreme supremacy of Liu, Qinghe, and Beiming also turned into meteors, followed closely by them. Relief, if we are in a hurry with the kid, Jian Wushuang, he will definitely use the Taro Excalibur, and you will stop him by then. Qinghe Supreme I blinked. Lai Ling Supreme nodded and replied with a sneer, it is well known that Jian Wushuang uses the Taro Excalibur, but it has only one blow. When this happens, the block will be blocked by a death charm. After speaking, he right-handly, and suddenly a scarecrow with the same appearance appeared in his hand. A yellow note was stuck on the scarecrow's forehead, enough to block a fatal blow for him. It is precisely because of this existence of the dead scarecrow that the three of them dared to pursue the sword without any worries. Qinghe Extreme saw this, and immediately smiled, and then looked at Jian Wushuang and shouted, "The sword unparalleled thief," quickly grabbed his hands and surrendered the Tai Luo Excalibur and the bronze ancient tripod. "This seat spares you." Jian Wushuang heard the words, looked at Qinghe Supreme with a kind of look at the idiot, and then said nothing, and flew towards the front again. He remembered that it was not far from the Tianhuang starfield, and there was a retrospective place. The retrospective place was perennially confused in time and space, and the void was broken, which was convenient for him to use all kinds of killers. The little thief, Jian Wushuang, is leading us back to the land. All three of Lai Chan are supreme of the universe. Naturally, they are not stupid people, but after a little thought, they guessed the intention of Jian Wushuang. This little thief's escape route is exactly what I intended, where the sword Wushuang was killed, and the remaining divine power fluctuations will immediately disturb the void storm. No one will know that it was we who killed Jian Wushuang. Taro Excalibur. As a result, each side of the horse and the other had their own misfortunes, and they all approached the place of retrospection with a tacit understanding. After Sanxiangxiang, a vortex land composed of numerous star fragments and cosmic meteorite appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian's footsteps stopped abruptly, and he turned his head to look at faintly to the three supremes. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was thinking quickly about the countermeasures in his mind. Among these three supremes, the Supreme Martyr is the strongest, followed by the medium Supreme Qinghe Supreme, and the weakest is the Beiming Supreme. His sword Wushuang wants to escape hunting, then he has to find a way to one of the supremes in an instant, otherwise, once the three supremes join forces with Buffer, even if he has a Taro Excalibur, I'm afraid there is only the way to defeat you can choose. If you use the Tai Luo Excalibur, kill Lieutenant Supreme first, then the risk is too great, it is very likely that you will not be able to kill it. Instead, you will be killed by the other two supremes while taking advantage of this gap. Jian Wushuang quickly meditated in his heart. Since he used the Taro Excalibur, he has beheaded and killed the Black Eagle Supreme, etc., are all elementary supremes. He can still kill the old-fashioned supremes of the high-level realm of Lai Ling Extreme ICA be sure. Then, it's better to use other magical powers to drag the Lai Ling Supreme and Beiming Supreme, and then kill and kill. Jian Wushuang's eyes were frozen, his eyes filled with cold and murderous power, locked on the face of Qinghe Supreme who came from the attack. Kill Qinghe Supreme, and at this time, the three Supreme Masters immediately followed. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled thief, you would bury your own body. Qinghe Supreme stood in the middle, and looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, and there was a cruel color in his eyes. But Beiming Supreme and Lieyu Supreme both stepped on their feet, blocking the sword Wushuang's retreat at once, and wielding a technique of closing the sky, creating a space of its own. The sword unparalleled thief, the old man said, I will kill you today. Go die. I saw Qinghe Supreme laughed wildly and took the lead. The seven-star magic knife in his hand reappeared, and the majestic magic swept through all directions and shattered the starry sky. Heaven will kill him, he must drive him crazy first. Qinghe, it's not my sword Wushuang who you today, but you. Jian Wushuang said lightly. The next moment, his eyes suddenly swayed, and condensed into substance. Talented, amazing life. Chapter 4366. Boom tilde. In an instant, a force of suppression from the higher life to the soul of the lower life suddenly descended and shrouded the three supremes. Bronze ancient tripod, go. When sword Wushuang flipped his right hand, a bronze ancient tripod appeared, and under a rotation, a large amount of innate fire was released again. These auras of instinctive Dinghua instantly burned like a fire, forming an overwhelming tendency to burn the sky, and rushed towards the fierce Lord Supreme. Jian Wushuang, you Xiao Ding are extraordinary. The innate Dinghua inside is enough to threaten the ordinary Supreme, but it is not enough for this seat. Lai Zun shook his head and waved several shields of light, blocking the raging fire. Jian Wushuang turned a deaf ear to him and ignored him, but turned it over again with his right hand, and Wu weapon sword appeared in his hand. Yongyi, now. Suddenly, Wu Weapon's Excalibur started from the point of the sword and disappeared every inch. Alas! A trace of dark mist like black ink poured from the soles of Jianwu's feet, and then ran towards Beiming Supreme to form a large black ball, wrapping Beiming Supreme in it. In that ball, a trace of deprivation of power appeared, as if there were a pair of big hands invisible, and began to deprive Beiming Supreme of everything. In the end, Jian Wushuang retracted his gaze, took a deep breath, and pulled back the Taro Excalibur from the back with a backhand. Puff puff. With the birth of the Taro Excalibur, a horrendous sword that shook the heavens and the earth, shook the world for 9 days, and appeared in this world. Feng Rue, domineering, evil, destroying and dying. It is impossible to use any words to describe the horror of this sword pressure, even if Qinghe Supreme is the supreme of the universe. In the face of this brilliant sword pressure, it can't help jumping his eyelids and his back cold. Is the killing trick? Qinghe Supreme narrowed his eyes and sneered. Sword unparalleled, you use this Tai Luo Excalibur, but it has only one blow. I think after this blow, what else do you use? What about your own strength? It's enough to kill you. Sword Wushuang coldly opened. Suddenly, the power of the endless avenue poured into the Taro Excalibur, breaking the 3 seals under the cover of the supreme cloth. Suddenly, the Taro Excalibur really shined golden light, and the scarlet eyes at the position of the sword opened suddenly. Breaking dawn. Jian Wushuang whispered. Click tilde. A golden light emerged, linking the sky and the sky together. Jian Wushuang disappeared, and merged with the Taro Excalibur, moving towards Qinghe Supreme at an extremely fast speed. At this moment, all the stars are overshadowed, the entire retrospective land stops rotating, and the void is directly like broken glass, opening up numerous cracks, and a sprinkling of fairy rays is shining to illuminate the whirl. The previous Taro swordsmanships were all spurred by Dominion Divine Power and Wu Weeping Sword, but now, this Breaking Dawn swordsmanship is motivated by the Taro sword and the power of the avenue, and the power is more than a few level. As the sword unparalleled swept across the starry sky, it was like an endless night torn by electricity, and the entire sky was suddenly torn into a crack. Qinghe Supreme suddenly shrank his pupils, and secretly horrified. How can this sword unparalleled thief be so horrible that he can compete with the old man without using the Taro Excalibur? Even using the Taro Excalibur feels threatening. I'm afraid that after using this Taro sword, this sun is enough to kill any supreme being below the supreme in the universe. If this sun achieves the supreme, wouldn't he, even the top supreme would take him can't? Qinghe Supreme couldn't help but be taken aback by his own conjecture, only feeling a scalp tingling. In this world, how can we allow such a villainous figure to exist? Qinghe, go to death. In the golden thread coming at a rapid speed, the sound of Jian Wushuang's icy bitterness came. Qinghe Supreme suddenly raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang, but suddenly he laughed. Swords warriors, you are indeed the most talented person ever since. You have the power to kill the old man when you hold a Taro sword. After a pause, he shook his head and said, it's just a pity that even if the old man arrives, you will kill the old man first. I saw a big wave of his sleeve, and suddenly a scarecrow with yellow rune paper appeared in his hand. This scarecrow is simply the supreme death rune that is strong enough to withstand a life and death crisis. Go with. Qinghe Supreme pushed with his right hand, and immediately welcomed the scarecrow to Jian Wushuang. However, a shocking situation has emerged. The moment the scarecrow first touched Daybreak Genmang, he was severely torn into countless fragments, and Daybreak Genmang didn't mean a little wear and tear, and once again killed toward Qinghe Supreme. Suddenly, Zhonghe's face was frozen and laughed. What's going on? Next moment, he turned his head violently, looking desperately into the sea of fire, but was the swift and stubborn Supreme Master who was able to cope with it, exasperated to the extreme. Li Eiji, are you Yinmi? Don't wait for him to finish. Puff. Daybreak Genmang has already passed through his chest fiercely. The sharp and overbearing Tai Luo Genchi directly smashed his immortal supreme godhead. Behind Qinghe Supreme Jin Guang gradually dissipated, exposing Jian Wushuang's black hair figure in black. Jian Wushuang held the Taro Excalibur and breathed slightly. What? I saw Qinghe Supreme glanced down at the hole in his chest, and then shattered an inch from the foot in the roar of rage. In the end, the whole person collapsed and crushed like a fortress piled up on the beach. The supreme generation has fallen. On the other side, the stubborn supreme emperor who was deeply trapped in the middle of the sea of fire had a smile on his face. Stupid, that the rune for death is the second life of the old man, will it really be used for you? Besides, it is better for the old man to enjoy the treasures such as the taro Excalibur. I saw the worn and dirty starry robe of him, and the starlight suddenly became bright, like a pearl that had been dusted off, releasing his own glory. Lai Zun's expression was gloomy, and he stepped out of the sea of fire step by step. The fiery fire could not hurt him. In just a few breaths, he walked out of the endless flames of fire completely, as if he was in a humble court. He looked at Jian Wushuang, twisted his neck, and smiled slightly. Sword Wushuang, now that you have finished using the tailor Excalibur, what else do you use to stop the old man? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked at Lai Ju Supreme without saying a word. This man seems to be taciturn, but in fact, he has a terrible mind. The Qinghe Supreme lives with him under the stars, and the friendship of dozens of chaotic eras. He was said to be yin-yin, then yin-yin, really. Want to come, if Qinghe Supreme did not trust this person completely, and did not use other means, Jian Wushuang would not have been able to kill him with such a sword. Extremely strong, good plan. Jian Wushuang said lightly. It was hard to hear whether it was ironic or praise. Chapter 4367. Within the Land of Traceability. Beiming Supreme is still trapped in the Kingdom of Eternal Night, and the vast starry sky is the only opposite of Jian Wushuang, and Lai Zun smiled and said nothing. The sword is unparalleled, and the person who knows current affairs is Zhun Jie. In front of absolute strength, whether it is your so-called force to overpower the same generation of talents, or the taro Excalibur in your hand. It's nothing, but it's like a dream bubble, it's broken. He twisted his beard on his chin and smiled with a little confidence, as if he knew everything. Zhiju was holding it. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. He knew that his enemies from the beginning to the end, but it was the supreme martyr. Either the Qinghe Supreme who has fallen, or the Beiming Supreme who is still trapped in the Kingdom of Eternal Night. He does not say that he has 100% certainty to kill him, but if he wants to leave, relying on the two people's means, absolutely can't stop him. Only this stubborn Supreme. The gap between him and the Supreme Lord Lai is too great. The Ultimate Master and the Supreme Master are completely different from one big realm and two small realms. What's more, the difference between these realms is completely the difference between cloud and mud. In the face of Jian Wushuang's silence, Lai Ling Supreme did not care, and continued, Sword Wushuang, the old man is wasting your lips with you now, because the old man has no heart to kill you. The old man still gives you a chance, you have to figure this out. Oh! Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. Lai Ju took a look at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword Wushuang, I have to say that your luck and talent are the highest in this era. It can even be said that since the birth of the universe, you can stand out from the crowd. At the top of the list, maybe the first day of the universe, the 100,000 pre-chaos prehistoric universe, can be a bit on your side. Suddenly, Lai Ling suddenly turned sharply and grinned, sword unparalleled. If the old man didn't guess wrong, the bronze ancient tripod you used before is the 100,000 Chaodong prehistoric kingdom. Chaos tripod? Speaking of this sentence, Lieju Supreme flashed an irresistible envy. Wu Yi Chao Chao Ding? Jian Wushuang was shocked when he heard his words. This was the first time he heard someone say the origin of the bronze ancient tripod. He had been wondering long ago that the power displayed by this bronze ancient tripod was not inferior to the taro Excalibur. In theory, it should definitely be one of the most important treasures in the universe. The sword is unparalleled. You do have to think about being stupid. Although the eyes of the old man are blind, they are not blind. People who can manipulate the chaotic innate 5 elements in ancient times have opened their fingers and counted only 2 or 3. The only powerful one is the Ding Chao Chao Ding. However, you don't seem to be able to fully awaken this chaotic Ding Wu Ding, otherwise you should be able to directly draw the power of chaos. Lai Zun said, shaking his head. Jian Wu's eyes twinkled. for fear that the fierce Lord Supreme Shaji did not make a mistake. The bronze ancient tripod he obtained from the prisoner dragon was the chaotic Pentium tripod in the east of the kingdom. At the same time, Jian Wushuang also understood why Lai Ling Supreme had been slow to kill him. I am afraid that the Supreme Martyr saw that he possessed the chaos, but he subconsciously thought that he had also inherited Jidong's heritage. He wanted to learn more about Jidong's burial place from his mouth, and more benefit. The fierce greed of the fierce lord was far beyond his imagination. Okay. Jian Wushuang, the old man's patience is running out. You obediently surrender the Taro sword and the Wu Ding Chao Ding, as well as the Taro sword and other opportunities. As long as you are obedient, the old man may not accept you. As a boy, although you will become the slave of the old man forever, you can survive. Liezhen Supreme twisted his neck and said, "If I don't say it." Jian Wushuang replied with a glance at him. He. Liezhen Supreme smiled slightly, with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Sword unparalleled, you are too overestimating your own strength, and you are too underestimating your husband. The gap between the Supreme and the Ultimate Master is far away from you. It is unthinkable that even if you have more supernatural power and more divine power, no matter how powerful your precious treasure is, in the eyes of the old man, it is just an ant. Having said that, Liezhen paused for a while before continuing to say, Sword Wushuang, pity you have no way to go and don't know it, let alone, then the old man will let you see the old man's ability. Liezhen shook his head, and flicked toward the sword without a finger. With this finger popping up, thousands of rules evolved and turned into various road rules, mixed together to form the power of Xion. In an instant, countless voids shattered, countless wormholes exploded, majestic, unlike the world. With only half a breath, the finger that destroyed the starry sky will fall on Jian Wushuang. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang's backhand reinserted the tailor Excalibur into the backsword box, and a flash of firmness flashed in his eyes. Call out. The next moment, Wu Wei's Excalibur united in his hands. Now that there is no road ahead, we will use our 3-foot blue sword to cut a path of life and death. The power of his boulevard is surging towards this finger. Chopper Star. A 5,000 Zhong Mori blue sword piercing the sky suddenly pierced the sky. The swordman's brilliance was so extreme that it seemed to break the entire universe. At that moment, there was only the swordman who cut the sun and the moon. In this swordman, the warrior's eyes were turbulent and the whole man was Black Fei Yang, holding this extremely blazing hand, Sen Lan Jianmang, like a peerless sword before the whirl. Star-cutting, a real killer created by Jian Wushuang. After he realized the power of the avenue, he also sublimated to the highest level and reached another level. This sword is split, and the Tao is full of vitality and charm, full of the meaning of heavenly cycle. This sword is the guardian. What is guardianship? In Jian Wushuang's understanding, as long as the enemies of this world are beheaded and killed, 9 days and 10 territories will be conquered, so that no one will dare to hurt him for half a point, and no one will dare to hurt him for half a point. It is really a powerful sword that has stepped into the category of Tao. Liezhen shook his head in admiration, but there was no fear in his eyes. Unfortunately, the old man also realized the Tao. The voice dropped, and I saw a finger pressed by Lai Ju, and let it shine again. This Huang sword was split on a finger he pressed, and it only invaded Baizhong, just like glass hitting a stone, and it broke apart. The shattered sword orn turned into countless ways, sweeping in all directions, crushing the countless meteorite in this retrospective land, and then shot farther into the universe and disappeared. Instantly, Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. Without waiting for him to think about it, that finger had been shot on Jian Wushuang, hitting him fiercely, breaking all the way to the void. Shocking the tree is ridiculous. There was no change in the look of relief extreme, and he shook his head. Chapter 4368. Fu Jun. In the universe, the cry of frost and heartbreaking sounded. Immediately afterwards, I saw the coldness rushing out of Zhentian Bay. Click, click. Jian Wushuang slammed into an asteroid fiercely, penetrating the asteroid directly, and then swept back tens of thousands of feet, before the figure stopped. There were a few cracks in his god's body, and his face was pale. Shuang'er, why are you out? Jian Wushuang glanced down at the cold frost, forcibly pressed the remaining boiling power in his chest, and said, Fu Jun, are you okay? Cold and frosty with a sad face, he strode over and said, I'm fine, you obediently go back to the town of Tianbei. Jian Wushuang shook his head at her, and then stared at Lai Ling Supreme again. I have to say that this Lai Lord is the most powerful enemy he has ever encountered. Oh! Lai Zun turned his eyes to look cold and frosty, then looked at Jian Wushuang, and said with a small smile, Jian Wushuang, this person is your companion? You are so blessed, not only the talent is extremely brilliant, but even this companion talent is also good, it seems to have a chance. Jian Wushuang didn't answer, but took a deep breath, and clenched the Wu Cry Excalibur in his hands again, his eyes blinking constantly, as if thinking in secret. Soon. Come again. Jian Wushuang yelled, breaking the dawn sword skill again. A gleam of golden light suddenly appeared. At the beginning, this golden light was only the thickness of hair, but then, the sword of anger was wrapped in it, turning it into a golden thorn, breaking all the darkness of the world, and killing again to the fierce lord. This sword, XG Xeon, is also the most powerful killing move in the sword without hands. It is extremely fast, like breaking through the violent waves, turning many asteroids along the way into powder, and the associated space is the same time. Shattered and terrified. Shocking sound explosions kept ringing where the golden light passed. This is Taro sword art, right? Lai Ju could not help but move slightly. He remembered that just now, Jian Wushuang held the Taro Excalibur and used this sword technique to kill Qinghe supremely. Unfortunately, if you use the Taro Excalibur to make this sword move, the old man is still afraid of you taking 3 points. You can't take it, but now you can no longer use the Taro Excalibur. You can only rely on your own strength. Just a joke. After that, Lai Ju's eyes were wiped, and within a void of eyes, the dark mansions were suddenly shot. Tian Tong, open. He sang softly, and in his eyes, the movement of Jian Wushuang in the dawning golden light suddenly became extremely slow, looking like a snail, struggling to move towards him. With his eyes, he can not only see through all the delusions in the world, but also slow down his movement speed and find flaws. Next moment. Supreme God, 9-day finger. The stern sneer sneered. In the void, he flicked 9 times in a row, as if playing a peeper. At the same time, 9 gods composed of the supreme divine power, like a meteor passing, bombarded the sword's weakness. I saw the dawning golden light transformed by Jian Wushuang. Every time it was dropped by 1 finger, it shuddered, and the golden light was worn away by 1 point. In the end, under the 8-finger streak, Jian Wushuang's breaking dawn Jian Mang was completely shattered, leaving only Jian Wushuang sprinting forward with his sword in a forward shape. Fu Jun. Instantly, the coldness of watching from a distance was frosty, and a heart tightened. In the end, Jian Wushuang deceived himself into the 10 feet of Lieji supreme god body, and the 9th finger was as big as a mountain, and finally fell down and hit the Wu weeping sword. There was a rush of mountains, and the power of grasping Qinghe came, and Jian Wushuang's right hand couldn't hold it. Wu Wei's Excalibur was severely collapsed and flying, and the right hand holding the sword was burst and shatter. The breaking dawn sword strokes, even before they were cut off, were shot by the fierce lord's supreme finger. Jian Wushuang, do you now understand? Is there a gap between you and me? Lai Zun's face was as cold as Hanchuan, and Hemong's twinkling eyes stared at Jian Wushuang, without the slightest sneer. Is it? At this moment, the sallow yellow sword unparalleled in his face, he laughed sharply. The next moment, he grabbed it with his left hand, and the tailored Excalibur, which was held on the back, came out again, and was automatically caught in his left hand. The dawning sword is just a guise. The real killing trick is the Taro Excalibur. In the past, he could only use the Taro Excalibur once. If he wanted to use it for the second time, he would have to recover for a long time. But how can he be the same as before? Go die. There was a flash of madness in Jian Wushuang's eyes, holding the left hand of Tai Luo divine sword, and slashing down towards the fierce supreme. At this moment, the power of the sword of Wushuang's whole body was madly mobilized, and then poured into the Taro Excalibur as much as it was swallowed by the Taro Excalibur. This sword, no reservations, spare no effort. This sword is enough to cut God. Suddenly, the vertical eyes on the hilt of the Taro Excalibur opened sharply, bloodshot. A majestic breath to the extreme permeated from the Taro Excalibur, an incandescent thunder exploded out of thin air, countless swords swayed, and endless energy interweaved, as if chaotic boiling. Bang tilde. Immediately, an explosion came, as if the heavenly gate was wide open, and the endless fairy light fell. At this moment, the figure of Jian Wushuang seemed to be blurred. In its place, it was a figure in a blue shirt. Holding a sword in one hand and a gourd jug in one hand, dim and drunk with eyes, and asked the world with a smile, "Who should I give up?" This is Tai Luo Zhenzuan. A horror suddenly appeared on the face of Lieutenant Supreme, and there was no way to remain calm. The person reflected in his eyes at this moment seemed not to be swordsman, but to become the invincible universe of the 100 Chaos period, and the entire town was invincible. Make countless days proud of the ancient sword, respect Taro. Cut. With the deep, cold voice of Jian Wushuang, the sword finally split. Tear it. In an instant, the entire universe was tens of thousands of feet apart, like a sword. Isn't it only possible to use one sword? How is this possible? Lai Zun's pupils shrank. According to the news from the universe, isn't the sword Wushuang only the one-strike power of the Taro Excalibur? How could he still use the Taro Excalibur now? How can it be? Don't let the supreme deep thought, Tai Luo's Excalibur has been cut down very quickly, so that he has no time to change or avoid, and can only take it. Swords warriors. The Supreme Master Lai understands that Jian Wushuang's use of Breaking Dawn sword art is not to kill him at all, but to distance him from him and catch him off guard. The real killing skill is Taro sword. Seeing the critical moment of life and death, Lai Zun's right hand quickly flipped over, and suddenly, a puppet doll that looked like crying and laughing, mixed with joy and sadness, appeared in his hands. Chapter 4369. Go with. His face sank, and his right hand quickly squeaked, and then the doll was a little bit more frowny, and instantly, the doll was like alive, twisting its body, crookedly standing up in the void, and replaced it with the Supreme. The whole person disappeared. The attack target of Taro's Excalibur suddenly changed, locked on this puppet, and severely chopped it down. Suddenly, the puppet doll was torn apart, and the extermination power on the Taro Excalibur also disappeared. Xianhui gradually dissipated, and Sword Wushuang, who was severely overdrawn with a lot of divine power, was unstable. He almost fell from the air, and successively took several strains of magic medicine to restore divine power. The depleted deities were nourished before they could feel better. A magic weapon for death. Jian Wushuang's face sank. This sword Lai Zun was immortal. I was afraid that it would be difficult to kill Lai Zun. Click and wipe. A void not far away was suddenly distorted, and then, the body of Lai Zun's supreme body gradually gathered. His expression was gloomy, his eyes stared at Xiong Wushuang, his eyes flashed coldly. If it had not been for his death in time, I was afraid that under this sword, he had already disappeared and followed in the footsteps of Qinghe Supreme. Well, sword unparalleled, the old man wanted to save you a life. Since you are so ignorant, then you should blame the old man for being ruthless and crush you directly, and the old man will not believe. With the help of the old man, you can insist on not telling yourself various opportunities. Lai Ling Supreme narrowed his eyes, and immediately saw his footsteps, and the void beneath his feet waved directly from the road. By the time his figure reappeared, he had already appeared in Jian Shuang's skull. He raised his foot, and stepped down fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, countless voids perished, and his foot turned directly into a mountain of thousands of miles, suppressing the quartet. Come again. Jian Wushuang's face was pale, but there was a coldness between his eyebrows. The power of countless avenues evolved beside him and turned into various rules. Immediately, his Wu Weeping Sword was split again. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. Jian Wushuang, who had already been slumped, felt like a flash of light, and his breath rose sharply, soaring. A terrible sun and moon, Feng Rui Jianhong tearing the sky appeared suddenly. However, after this Feng Rui Jianhong was split, he just fell into this big foot. Jianhong was severely broken, and the sword was unparalleled. When stepped down by 3,000 stars, the body collapsed. Fu Jun. Suddenly, as cold as frost falling into the ice cellar, his eyes became flushed and his eyes were wet with tears. I don't know how long, she has never seen Jian Wushuang in such a despair. Watching Lai Jue's expression of indifference, she wanted to chase Jian Wushuang again, biting her teeth as coldly as frost, and the whole body of divine power broke out. A mantis arm is a cart, and it is beyond our control. Lai Zun looked at Lung Rushuang coldly, and waved his hand. A magnificent mighty power blasted out of his hand, and smashed Lung Rushuang directly into the depth of a star. Don't worry, when the old husband kills your husband, Junjian Wushuang, he will send you to be his companion. Lai Zun snorted coldly, then looked at Jian Wushuang again. I saw Jian Wushuang, the body collapsed, and the body reorganized instantly, and the pale face turned into wax yellow. He held the Wu Weeping Sword in his right hand, stood trembling and straightened his body, stared at the Supreme Master Li Yi, and suddenly laughed. Jian Wushuang, what are you laughing at? Lai Zun's brow frowned, and the dark wind flickered in the dark eyes. To him now, Jian Wushuang is now a catfish jumping on the chopping board, alive or dead, but only between his thoughts. Relief. Do you really think that I have no idea what to do? Jian Wushuang converged with a smile, shook his head, and his eyes returned to calmness. Ha ha. A taunt of irony appeared in the eyes of Lai Ling Supreme, and said, Jian Wushuang, let's not talk about your strengths and talents. The old man has to admire you only for your tough and tenacious vitality. Whatever you decide, you can't get out of this retrospective place. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow, then lowered his head to remove a jade card hanging from his waist, and couldn't help sighing. Bloodwave Supreme, my sword unparalleled owes you again. Hey! The next moment, sword unparalleled crushed the waist jade. Click! A crack opened at the waist. A magnificent, as if from the chaos of Taiku, slowly rising from the jade brand. This is. Suddenly, Lai Ju was trembling with horror, and a horror burst into his eyes. This breath is far above him. His strength enough to crush the sword unparalleled, in this breath, is just the difference between a child and an adult. The gap is even greater than he and Jian Wushuang. Rumble. This breath is getting more and more boiling. At this moment, the entire retrospective place seems to be stationary, and everything has stopped functioning. Lai Ju's eyes widened, and I saw that this breath kept condensing and finally turned. A middle-aged man in black with a clean face and expressionless face. The middle-aged man in black is billions tall and his eyes are like mountains. At his feet, nearly 10,000 squares of stars have turned into a pool of blood and stained with a strange red. A horror of power that could not be described in any words, surging up, slamming the quartet, subjecting all the nations, shaking 9 days and 10 places. The Supreme in the Supreme, Bloodwave. Suddenly, Lai Zun's body was trembling and terrified. Bloodwave Supreme, one of the 5 chief Supremes of the Life Shrine, is second only to the existence of the Supreme. Bloody Supreme, an earth-shattering epic who has survived the Battle of the Holocaust, has fought countless times in his life, once overwhelmed the Taishu Temple, and fought against the newest Emperor's Ice Mast at night. He once played against the Lord of the Invincible Supreme Daewoo Temple, and finally, he shined in the battle with the Dragon Clan, and the Supreme died in his hands, no less than his hand. It can be said that as long as the Invincible Supreme cannot be reached, the Bloodwave Supreme can run wild in the universe, and that is the real big man in the depths of the universe. Far from being able to compare to the slain sage who lives in the wild wilderness of the universe. Next moment. The image of Supreme, the eyes slowly opened, without the slightest emotion, looking coldly at Lai Ling Supreme. Who gives you the qualifications to dare to deceive me in the Temple of Life? Huh. The endless blood pool condenses, turning into a big hand that covers the sky, and shoots towards the extreme Lai Ju. What horror does the Supreme give in one shot? Especially the supreme existence of the top Supreme such as Bloodwave. At this moment, the avenue of heaven and earth trembled and roared at the same time, countless voids shattered and collapsed at the same time, and the entire retrospective place exploded. Chapter 4370. Escape. Suddenly, Lai Zun's supreme heart was frightened, and he was about to crack. However, the entire universe seemed to be frozen. Under the full blow of Bloodwave Supreme, a huge suction was taken from the palm of the hand, and the entire body of Liu Supreme rolled up and flew towards the palm of this bloodwave. This palm was finally depressed. Endless Xianhui stars are rising, and if the palms are visible under this palm, there will be nothing. Lai Ju's body was full of divine power, and he resisted this palm. At this moment, his heart was full of remorse, and he was even more aggrieved. If he had known that Jian Wushuang had such a big killing trick, even if he gave him 10 guts, he would not dare to hunt down Jian Wushuang. Click and wipe. However, nothing said at this time is useless. This palm is the full blow of the Supreme Master. If the Supreme Lord is uncertain, he can still compete with 1 or 2. Bloodwave Supreme's full blow. I saw his feet start, and with this huge power from the palm, the inch-by-inch collapse was worn away, and then his arms began to explode. Jian Wushuang, even if the old man is dead, it will not make you feel better. Lai Ling Extreme turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang, his face turned into a resentment, and he screamed with all his strength, "Supreme God, blood curse." Suddenly, the eyes of Lai Ling's eyes exploded sharply, 2 bloodstreams were taken out of his eyes, constantly twisted and condensed, and finally hung on the sword Wushuang's head, turning into a scarlet huge killing word. Under this word of killing, all concealed means of Jian Wushuang will have nothing to hide, and will even be like carrion, and will attract thousands of miles around the starry sky. All those who are above the supreme realm will be attracted. Damn! Jian Wushuang's face was suddenly gloomy, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Ha 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 ha, sword unparalleled, the old man would have to see, this Bloodwave Supreme's full blow can protect you several times. Bang! In the loud laughter of Ryukyu Supreme, the gods of Ryukyu Supreme shattered, and all vitality was wiped out by the palm of the Supreme. Lai Ju Supreme, just die. And that palm, after killing Lai Ling Supreme, the power gradually disappeared, and finally disappeared invisible and returned to nothingness. Jian Wushuang's feet were empty, his hair was flying, his face was cloudy and cloudy. The fall of Lai Zun's Supreme did not make him feel the slightest joy. The huge kill word hanging over his head was like a beacon in the dark. It was extremely prominent and gave him nothing to hide. He tried to erase the word kill with the power of the road, and tried to see if the antelope mask could cover it, but it was useless, all means were useless. This is trouble. The light of Jian's eyes kept blinking, he knew just by thinking about it, only fearing the word kill, the supreme of the whole universe would make a sensation for it, and came to hunt him down. Just as Jian Wushuang kept pondering, suddenly a crazy laugh came from not far away. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled, this seat is finally out. I saw in the distance, the kingdom of Yongyi continued to shatter, and finally burst into a blast. Although Beiming Supreme was embarrassed, his face was so smooth that he burst out laughing from Yongyi Kingdom. Qinghe Supreme, Lai Ling Supreme, are you alright? Come, let's quickly join hands to win the little thief, Jian Wushuang, and share his treasure. What? Extreme Qinghe? Extreme Liu? The next moment, the laugh on Beiming Supreme's face froze, as if he was choking his throat, and his face rose red. I saw a burst of chaos in the surrounding void, and the void burst into countless cracks, and the entire retrospective land was destroyed once. Under this starry sky, where are the shadows of Qinghe Supreme and Liu Supreme? Only the swordless man in black and black hair turned his head slowly, his eyes staring at him coldly. Suddenly, Beiming Supreme stayed asleep, but still boldly asked, "Little sword master, this seat asks you, what about Qinghe Supreme and Liu Supreme?" Jian's eyes looked at him strangely, but he did not expect that among the 3 Supremes who came to hunt him, the weakest Beiming Supreme lived the longest. Immediately, he quietly replied, "You guess." For some reason, Beiming Supreme heard a faint feeling in his heart, quickly spreading his divine power and feeling the surroundings. The next moment, Beiming Supreme changed his face, took a breath, and his lips trembled. Are they dead? Without waiting for his sword Wushuang to answer, he stepped on his feet and surging up his spirit. Just when Jian Wushuang thought that this Beiming Supreme was going to avenge the dead Qinghe Supreme and Lai Ling Supreme, he had clenched his Wu-crying sword. Shaxing. This is Zuanxing. Beiming yelled, but turned away and fled, and disappeared in front of Jian Wushuang's eyes after a swift effort. Okay. When Jian Wushuang saw this, he couldn't help but look at it, and then his face flashed with the wrong color. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang did not intend to chase him. This Beiming Supreme is nothing but an elementary supreme, which poses no threat to him. At most, it will spread his news, and he is now spreading his head. It doesn't make much difference whether to go out or not. Now what I have to do is to find a place to restore the divine power and really start the bronze ancient tripod. Only in this way can I have the strength to protect myself in the next real war. Jian Wu's eyes flashed quickly, making a decision quickly. Then, with a big wave of the sword, Wu Shuangshou entered the town monument as cold as frost, and quickly went in one direction. What Jian Wushuang didn't know was that, just before he was gone, the two Shenmangs flashed like meteors, and suddenly appeared in this retrospective place. The divine light dispersed, revealing two supreme figures. This breath is the Taro magic sword. The sword Wushuang was here before. One of them wore a dipper, a supreme knife on his waist, and his voice sank. Yes, this is the breath of Tai Luo divine sword, and there is still the old ghost of Lai Ling Supreme, and the divine power of Qinghe Supreme fluctuates. It seems that these two people died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The other one was covered with shackles and stature, with an ugly old woman, and said hoarsely, "Go." Jian Wushuang should not have gone far, we chase. The eyes of that supreme man Dai Doguang flashed, and he looked around in the void, and finally fixed his eyes in the direction that Jian Wushuang was leaving, and a sneer evoked in the corner of his mouth. You see, there is a channel. Sword Wushuang should have hit the blood curse of the fierce old ghost. The two looked at each other, immediately flashed into shape, and once again turned into two gods, chasing towards Jian Wushuang at a very fast speed. Soon the retrospective land fell into silence. It didn't take long for several supreme masters to arrive one after another. After a little thought or two, their faces were greedy with a greedy smile, chasing away in the direction that Jian Wushuang left. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.